Okay, let's dive into this. We share this planet with an incredibly sophisticated species. And get this, they exist in only two places on Earth. Not two continents, not two hemispheres. Literally just two islands in the entire world, Borneo and Sumatra. Today, in this explainer, we're going to look at the truly remarkable story of the orangutan. These are deeply emotional, profoundly intelligent beings, and their story is this epic mix of millions of years of evolution, ice age geography, and right now, a really urgent crisis.
So why only Borneo in Sumatra? It's a fascinating geographic anomaly, right? Because if you look for other great apes, like gorillas or chimpanzees, you're going to find them over in Africa. But orangutans? Nope. They are nowhere near Africa. They were exclusively found on these two specific Indonesian islands. So why here, and literally nowhere else on Earth? Well, to solve this mystery, we first need to understand exactly who we're looking for.
Which brings us to Section 1, 3 species, 2 islands.
Before we can answer the why, we actually have to update the what. Because for a long time, scientists thought there was just one type of orangutan. But recent genetic studies, they've revealed a way more complex family tree, dividing them up into 3 distinct species. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that stark contrast in the numbers. We have the Bornean orangutan, sitting at roughly 60,000 individuals, then the Sumatran orangutan with about 14,000, but take a look at that tiniest sliver right there. That represents the Tapanuli orangutan. Guys, they were only discovered and recognized as a distinct species back in 2017, and there are just 800 of them left in the Batong Toru forests of North Sumatra. 800. That makes them the absolute rarest great ape on the planet.
Now, what unites all 3 of these distinct species is this concept called island endemism. Basically, that means there are absolutely zero backup populations. They are entirely endemic to Borneo and Sumatra. So, if they get wiped out on these 2 islands, they go extinct everywhere. There's no hidden wild population waiting in the wings to save the day. It's just them.
Moving on to Section 2, the Ice Age Isolation.
To understand how they ended up in this crazy isolated position, we actually have to rewind the clock, like way back, hundreds of thousands of years to the Ice Age. See, millions of years ago, orangutans weren't trapped on islands at all. Fossil evidence actually shows they thrived all across mainland Southeast Asia, places like modern-day Thailand, Vietnam, and southern China. Then, during the Ice Age, somewhere between 100,000 and 10,000 years ago, sea levels plummeted, and this created a massive land bridge called Sundaland. So orangutans migrated all across this giant connected landmass. But when the Ice Age ended, the sea levels rose again, permanently cutting off Borneo and Sumatra from the mainland, and basically trapping the orangutans right there.
And here's the really wild part. While the rest of mainland Asia experienced these massive climate shifts that shrank the tropical forests, eventually replacing them with grasslands where orangutans just couldn't survive, Borneo and Sumatra acted as refugia. Think of them as these massive, stable life rafts of dense tropical rainforest. Back on the mainland, competition from other primates and habitat loss totally wiped them out. But on these island refugia, they held on and they survived.
All right, Section 3, Masters of the Rainforest.
Because they spent millions of years basically confined to these very specific, super dense rainforests, orangutans evolved to become absolute specialists of this environment. I mean, they aren't just animals that happen to live in the woods, they are literally masters of the canopy. Orangutans spend up to 95% of their lives high up in the trees. It's wild. And to sustain that arboreal lifestyle, they require year-round food sources, mainly fruit. Plus, they desperately need a continuous, completely unbroken tree canopy to travel safely. And because fruit is kind of scattered everywhere, a single male might need a massive territory of 50 to 100 square kilometers just to find enough to eat. So yeah, they demand vast, completely intact ecosystems.
Let's look at Section 4, our extraordinary relatives.
As we learn just how specialized they are, we also really need to understand how incredibly close they are to us. 97%. That is the exact amount of DNA we share with orangutans. We actually share a common ancestor from roughly 12 to 15 million years ago. So, the crucial point is that genetic closeness translates to some really profound behavioral and emotional similarities that completely blur the line between human and ape.
They are highly unique among the great apes. While chimpanzees and gorillas are famous for those highly social, really loud group dynamics, adult orangutans are primarily solitary. But hey, don't mistake that for a lack of connection. Orangutan mothers actually raise their babies for a solid 7 to 9 years. That is one of the longest childhood dependencies in the entire animal kingdom. It's a bond defined by intense affection, learning, and teaching.
And their intelligence? It's simply staggering. They don't just use tools, they actually craft them. Like making leaf gloves to handle spiky fruits, or fashioning umbrellas out of branches when it rains. It's amazing. They even pass the mirror self-awareness test, proving they know they exist as distinct individuals. They plan ahead to solve complex, multi-step puzzles. And they feel deeply too. Researchers have observed mothers expressing profound grief, literally carrying a lost infant for days.
Which brings us to Section 5, the extinction crisis.
And honestly, this brings us to the real gut punch of our explainer today. After millions of years of perfectly adapting to their island refugia, these highly intelligent beings are now facing a rapid, completely human-driven extinction crisis. Think about this. Just 150 years ago, there were hundreds of thousands of orangutans swinging through the canopies of Borneo and Sumatra. But today, across all three species combined, we are down to just 70,000 to 80,000 individuals total. That is a massive 80 to 85% collapse in their population over just one single century.
And here's the exact reason why. 80%. That is the catastrophic amount of orangutan habitat that has been completely, totally destroyed in just the past 75 years. And remember what we talked about earlier. They literally cannot survive outside the canopy. So when the forest disappears, the orangutans disappear right along with it.
So what's causing this? Well, there are four compounding drivers behind this destruction. First up, millions of hectares of pristine rainforest have been completely cleared to make way for palm oil plantations. Second, both legal and illegal logging operations are shattering the continuous canopy they absolutely need to move around. Third, coal and gold mining are just stripping the land bare. And fourth, deliberate forest fires, set to clear land for agriculture, are burning vast areas to ash. And on top of that staggering habitat loss, there's a really devastating secondary threat: the illegal pet trade. It's a grim reality, but the equation is basically this. Each baby captured equals one mother killed because orangutan mothers protect their young so fiercely during that long 7 to 9 year childhood we talked about. Capturing a baby for the pet trade almost always means the mother has to be killed. It's this awful compounding tragedy that fragments populations and destroys entire generations.
Finally, Section 6. How we save them.
Look, it's really easy to look at those numbers and just feel entirely hopeless. But this extinction isn't some unavoidable natural disaster like an asteroid strike, right? It's a deliberate choice. And that means we can choose differently. We can actually choose to save them. Let's move to and see how this builds, because organizations are fighting back right now and proving that conservation absolutely works. They are establishing heavily protected areas, like Tanjung Puting National Park. They're running rehabilitation centers to rescue displaced orangutans and teach them survival skills. They're actively restoring the forest canopy. And importantly, through things like the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil certification, they are trying to shift massive economic practices so that agriculture doesn't require clearing any more pristine forests.
And honestly, the stakes go far beyond just the orangutan itself, because they are what scientists call a flagship species. Basically, by protecting the vast territories that an orangutan needs to survive, we act as an umbrella, simultaneously protecting thousands of other plants, insects, and animals in that same area. Plus, we also preserve the rainforests themselves, which act as these vital global carbon sinks, keeping our entire planet's climate stable. So simply put, protecting them protects us all. Orangutans exist only in Borneo and Sumatra today, because everywhere else on Earth, they've already gone extinct. And if we don't act now, these two islands are going to be next. So it really comes down to a simple, fundamental choice. Will we choose short-term profit, or will we choose to protect the survival of one of humanity's closest, most extraordinary relatives? The choice is entirely up to us.